you don't know where you're going, nobody else does. There are no stupid questions.
Welcome to Life at Grow Enrollments, where we bring you insights, tips, and stories from our vibrant company culture. I'm Josh, your host for today's episode, and our topic for today is going to be empowering, and that is climbing the career ladder remotely. Now, I know it's easier said than done, but with the right approach, it's more than possible. Joining me today is Harry, our business development manager, who has more than excelled in her career remotely. Hey Harry, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you here as well. Can you tell me more about your role at Grow Enrollments and one of your favorite milestones?
Absolutely, Josh. So I essentially oversee our top of the funnel, which are all activities in the initial stage of the funnel, which is where our potential customers first become aware of our service. So within our top of the funnel, we have teams that work on things like lead generation, social media, branding, research, and prospecting. To answer your second question, my favorite career milestone was actually here at Grow Enrollments, where I transitioned from the account executive role to the business development manager role. So that's because I got to work on really fun things like building out the right sales strategy, fine-tuning our training programs, developing best practices, and seeing our team grow both internally and professionally has been so amazing.
Yeah, it's actually been a great journey with you as well. Really great to see a lot of passion aligned with your career. Looks like you really enjoy all of the strategizing and overseeing development and also looking at our growth or team growth. Now, with further ado, I'd love to jump into our main topic for today. First up is setting a clear goal. Harry, can you tell me more about your approach on goal setting, especially with the remote environment?
So that's a great question, which reminds me of the quote that says, without a goal and plans to reach them, you're like a ship that has set to sail without a destination. And to me, it's so true because if you don't know where you're going, nobody else does. So I think setting clear goals is so important, maybe even more important when you're fully remote. But when I set my goals, I sit down and I think about what I want, what's important to me, and where I see myself getting to. So I divide that into short-term and long-term goals. And I always share my professional goals with my manager and team. That way, everybody's aligned and it gives me a clear direction.
And for me, I think the best thing that I like to do is like to keep notes as well, and then just sitting them and then bring them on track as well. I think I especially love the quote though. You have to give me that, and maybe I could put it as a wallpaper to give me like a reminder for my clear goals and stuff. I wanted to do a follow-up question for this. Have you ever had to like adjust your goals midway?
Oh, definitely. Goals need to be flexible sometimes because the reality is life happens. So sometimes projects change, you might change, or new priorities come up. But communicating those changes with your team or manager is key so that everybody's still aligned.
Definitely. And I see that a lot with basically how our process goes through it. A lot of over communicating and making sure everyone's reminded on what their tasks are. With that, I'd like to go in with the second strategy, which is communicating effectively. This is something people always talk about within a company, and I think it's easier said than done. Don't you think so?
Oh yeah, for sure. So exactly what you said, Josh. When you're remote, over communication is always better than under communication. So I'll tell you a story. There was one night, There's one night where, okay. So I'll tell you. So there was one night where, So I'll tell you a story. There was one night where, when you just know you're about to get super sick. So it was one of those nights I couldn't sleep. I was tossing and turning, and it was like 4 a.m. in the morning. Mind you, my workday starts at 6 a.m. So in hindsight, I should have sent a message to work, which I didn't. But next thing I know, I wake up the next morning at like 10 a.m. I had multiple missed calls, a flurry of work messages. And the first thing our HR manager asked me is, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's like the sweetest thing anyone's done for me." But Mind you, we're a fully remote company with employees all across the globe. So she's on the other side of the world searching the news and seeing if there was a catastrophic event that had hit Vancouver because it was so unlike me to just, disappear without a word. If I had over communicated, I would have probably saved our HR manager a few hours of her time. I think it's super important to keep emails, messages, and meetings super clear and to encourage questions. And I always say there are no stupid questions because especially when you are not face to face, a lot can be lost in translation. Josh, I know I always preach the stupid questions like all the time, but it's like there really isn't. And
Yeah, it's like a broken record for you at this point. Like, there's no stupid questions. You guys
I
should
know.
ask.
Exactly. And I much rather prefer a book of questions than someone going off and doing what they think is being asked about.
With that being said, how do you balance being proactive with over communicating?
That's a good one. So I try to keep communication structured, whether it's through weekly updates or scheduled one-on-ones. That way, I'm not overwhelming people with constant messages, but I'm also keeping that line of communication open.
I think tone matters as well a lot in written communications. It helps a lot with avoiding misunderstanding and making sure that everyone knows where your point is standing. Let's go on through our next strategy, which is seek professional development. This one is really, really important, especially in a remote environment. What do you think about that, Harry?
Absolutely. So I think professional development is often overlooked when you're remote, but I feel like being remote gives you more time back to take advantage and refine your skills. So for me, I often take online courses, I attend webinars, I join workshops. But going back to communication, because it's so important, if you're seeking development, it's great to let your manager know so that they can help point you in the right direction. And it also shows initiative and keeps you growing.
Definitely. And I really do agree with the part where you try to leverage having somebody manage over you and asking them for help so that you can grow with them. It's definitely better if you're communicating that as well, asking for actually professional development. And with that, let's move on to our next strategy, which is building relationships. I think this one can be tough given the remote environment that we're in and not being physically there. What do you think about that, Harry?
No, definitely, Josh. It's challenging, but building relationships is still very possible in a remote setup. You just have to be more intentional about it. So I make an effort to connect and support my team, whether it's work or non-work related issues. I have weekly team meetings and I also meet with everybody one-on-one. And honestly, sometimes our one-on-ones aren't even about work, but those tend to be the deepest conversation I've had with my team members because the reality is life gets tough. When you have compassion and you're there for your team during those times, that's what they'll remember the most.
Definitely. And I just want to say this to the viewers. It's always so comfortable to speak with Harry. Sometimes I end up oversharing sometimes.
It's never oversharing.
It's not even though we're not physically together, I think one of the things that I found to be very effective is the one-on-ones that you have as management and also the team activities. Even if it's online team activities, I think that it helps bring people closer. With that, I wanted to ask, do you think virtual networking is as effective as in-person networking?
Yes, I think it can be, especially if you make an effort to be present and engaged. It's all about how much you put into it. So I also try to keep conversations going after meetings or a networking event. But it's crazy because, for the viewers, I've never met Josh in person, but I feel like I know who he is and just his presence, his vibes from all the one-on-ones we have. So I think that's great as well.
Yeah, let's go to our last but not the least strategy, which is demonstrating your value. So this one's a huge one for climbing up the career ladder, especially remotely. And I'd love to know how you would go about this.
So for me, it's all about consistently taking initiative and delivering results. Whether it's, problem solving or leading a new project, I always look for ways to refine processes and deliver more value.
And how do you balance demonstrating your value without actually feeling like you're over promoting yourself? Oh no, I'm too vain, or maybe I may look like I'm trying to push myself too much into different lines or something like that.
Yeah, so it's definitely a fine line, but if you focus on how your work benefits the team or your company, it feels more natural. It's not just, about you, it's about the impact that you're making.
Definitely, and I think people are recognized is when they're helping the team itself. With that, I really, really do enjoy having you here, Harry.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me, Josh.
I hope our listeners are taking notes because these strategies are a game changer for anyone looking into climbing the career ladder, especially remotely. And with that, we're wrapping up today's episode of Life at Grow Enrollments. Big thanks to Harry for sharing her expertise. Remember, remote work doesn't mean you can't climb up the ladder. It just means you have to do it a bit differently. Until next time, stay motivated, stay productive, and most importantly, keep growing.